Hey everybody and welcome. I'm Matt, Client Success Manager for White House Custom Color, and we are so excited to be joined today by Sean Brown.
I can't wait.
Yeah,
it's going to be
absolutely.
fun today. Yeah.
We'll get back to an introduction with you in just a minute. So before we get started though, I want to give out a few announcements. So if you haven't hit the subscribe button on the Whcc YouTube, make sure and do that. That way you're going to be notified when we have awesome events like this coming up. So make sure and hit that subscribe button. Follow along on Instagram at Whcc Pro, and for all of your questions regarding all of our awesome products and sizes and finishes and all the things available, go to whcc.com. So again, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be fun today.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you. Before we get started, I mean, we know a lot about you. I've known you now for probably 6 years, I think it's been. But for people who are following along, tell everybody who you are, where you're from, what you do, because you do a lot of things.
I don't know if that's true, but so I'm Sean Brown, as you know, and I'm a high school senior photographer in Portland, Oregon, and I also do a lot of education too, and I help photographers build thriving senior photography businesses so that they can also have the freedom and flexibility that I have had the pleasure of experiencing as my own business. And then, you know, outside of the photography stuff, you know, I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so love our, as a lot of people call it, the dirty pond water, which is, you know, a nice craft beer and tacos.
Is that what they call it?
That's what they call it, yeah. People say I drink dirty pond water.
Nice.
And a lot of outdoor stuff, a lot of skiing, golfing, so definitely was tearing it up on the slopes this season with a lot of snow, so
awesome.
Grateful for that, and love to travel, explore the outdoors,
and tacos.
And tacos.
Yes, always tacos.
Yes,
tacos and beer.
Doing that for dinner tonight, so Matt knows me well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So also, while we are going through with Sean today, I want you guys to understand how cool it is that we have him here live. So if you do have questions, make sure and put them in the chat. We have our team in the room that's going to put them up on the board, and we'll get Sean to answer them real time. So make sure, don't be shy, put the questions in the chat, and we will get them answered for you while we're going along today. So just to give you a little bit of background, so like I said, I've known Sean for a long time, but most recently, it was in November that we were in Austin. I saw Sean's program, and I was so impressed by the level of detail and research and content that you had in your program that I really wanted to have you here to be able to talk with our White House family on a live. Now, that program was how many hours long?
It was supposed to be 2. I think it probably ran a little bit longer than that.
Longer.
Yeah.
So we don't have 2 hours today, unfortunately, so we're going to condense a little bit. So we're going to shorten up some of the content, but we're going to hit on 2 major topics today, and definitely ask questions along the way because we have a great resource sitting here with us. So let's just start off about, you know, there's a lot of things in the news. We all, you know, are watching the news. We see, you know, things that are happening, and you know, there's some fear out there, and you know, potentially a lot of changes happening in our world. So, in your opinion, Sean, what are some of the top things that photographers will be facing or possible challenges here within the next, you know, 12, 18, 24 months? Yeah,
and so this is something we were kind of chatting a little bit about before we went live too, which is this notion that this big scary recession might be coming. So what's going to happen with that? Are people going to be losing their jobs? Are people tightening up their spending? And the other is kind of this commoditization of photography, especially with a bunch of people where AI is now all of a sudden something that is a very real concern for a lot of photographers, and even more so than 6 months ago when we were in Austin. So now we have a whole new component. So now not only are there more photographers than ever, but now we also have to worry about technology and how is that going to be changing our industry as a whole. And these are very real concerns that a lot of photographers are facing. And so there are ways to overcome it. So, you know, you don't need to freak out or anything like that. So it's not time to go in and hunker down and just say, you know what, the world is ending. Because with everything,
that doesn't go anywhere good.
No, and I mean, it's not like we haven't seen changes before in the industry. We saw it with the change from film to digital. We saw this especially in the senior portrait genre, we saw this with a lot of studios not necessarily being as heavily utilized as they were prior in terms of like, you would go to the studio, they had all these amazing sets and everything. And in my neck of the woods in 2013, that kind of all started going away.
Yeah.
It all shifted to a lot more of an on-location portrait approach. So it's not like we haven't seen changes before. It just, when it doesn't look like something we've seen before, we get a little bit scared, a little bit nervous. And
For sure.
That's what we'll kind of dive into today.
And you and I were discussing last night at dinner, with AI, it's not just focused in the photography industry. When you think about the film to digital transition, that was, we were in the midst of that and at the forefront of that. AI is changing everything.
Yeah,
right now.
It's going to touch every single person's job.
Yeah, for sure. So, and that honestly is a whole nother topic.
For another can of worms. Yeah.
But it's things that we're reading, we're seeing, we're hearing, every day now about all the different challenges and things of that. So, those would be things that you want to be mindful of, going into the future.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, do you feel that if the big scary word happens, do photographers need to fear that? Like, how is a person going to navigate that, Sean?
Yeah, great question. So I don't know if fear is the right word. I don't think you need to worry about it, but I do think you need to be prepared for it. So with anything, when there's a new change, when there's a shift in, especially like economics, where all of a sudden this is affecting dollars, like this is where people are choosing to spend their money, you have to figure out ways to navigate that. Yep. And one of the things that we kind of have seen is, what's the saying? History always repeats itself. And if you say, oh, this time is different, those are the words you never want to say, right? This time is different, because that's often not the case. And so looking at historical trends and seeing, okay, well, what happened in like 2000? What happened in 2008 with these kind of similar economic circumstances where you saw kind of heavy economic booms followed by kind of these downturns? What happened there? And one of the things that we kind of see is that there are very particular kind of subsets of the economy that typically do best. Okay. And that's going to be in your luxury goods, where traditionally in the last few recessions you've seen individuals that are at kind of the higher socioeconomic statuses are able to withstand a little bit better than those who are even lower or lower middle class, right? And so typically those individuals are going to be those who are going to invest in photography, who see the value in those experiences. And we see this data from companies like American Express. We see this from the travel industries where, you guys are in Minneapolis, so Delta's a big airline for you guys, and people are still flying, and Delta's still raising their prices and everything. So you see kind of these almost insulated categories, which is kind of that higher end luxury consumer good, where the people that have the money are still willing to spend it. You might see them tightening back a little bit, but one of the things we also, and I'm not sure if we break into this a little bit later, is you see these milestone sessions where you have newborns, you have weddings, you have seniors, and these industries are going to be insulated as well, because now not only are you pairing these luxury kind of experiences, but you can't have a newborn again. Like, this isn't something that you wait 6 months and you say, oh, well, I'll have newborn photos, because it's not a newborn anymore. You don't have a newborn anymore. It's not like you say, oh, well, we'll just postpone this wedding that's been planned for a year now or whatever. And you can't say, well, we're actually just going to hold you back another year in school so that we can do your senior photos next year when hopefully the economy is a little bit better. And so you see these milestone sessions as an opportunity to, if you are not maybe already utilizing these in your business, potentially think about incorporating these into your business, because that's going to insulate you a little bit more. And then also focusing on kind of that high-end client experience, basically, rather than just saying, you know what, we're just going to lower our prices, we're going to pull back as much as we possibly can too, in terms of like the experience we're providing, we're just going to cheapen everything, cut our bottom line. That's never the right answer. No. And if you look at recessions too, this is typically when companies that emerge out of them become even stronger. Right. And so it's the companies that double down on what their true purpose, intention, long-term is, and they kind of say, you know what, we're not really going to worry too much about what's going on in the external. We're going to focus in on what is it that we truly want to do? What is it that we want to be known for? And how can we provide the best possible service? How can we do the best possible experience? And moving into that kind of higher end market is a fantastic way to really help your business out, because that's going to separate you from a lot of the kind of the silt on the bottom of the river, so to speak.
Right. That's a really interesting way to look at that. So you're saying to avoid the race to the bottom.
Avoid the race to the bottom, and yeah, pretty much that's summarizes it up. Yeah.
So a few months ago, I had the opportunity to be on a podcast with you, and we really focused on fear and letting fear make decisions for you. And I know when I asked that last question, you said it wasn't necessarily fear, but I really think that that does tie in because, you know, we talk to a lot of people, you talk to a ton of people, and there is that fear-based decision making that's happening out there. So to a person that is feeling that pressure and is making decisions that potentially aren't best for what you just described of building your luxury brand and going that way, how can you change that mindset and adapt to become more successful?
That's $1 million question right there, isn't it?
Go.
Yeah. So what I often see, and you know, I coach a lot of photographers in every single market imaginable, and so you speak to everybody in every market imaginable too. And one of the things that we often see fear stem from is money. And let's just call it for what it is. It's almost like this financial security. And when we lose that, a lot of people start to freak out. It's like, okay, how do I pay for my employees? How am I paying for my overhead? And what happens is we make these decisions that are very short-term versus long-term. And it can be a tough mindset to pull yourself out of. Yeah, because it says, okay, it feels very immediate. It feels like we have something where we have to take care of it one way or another. And so what happens is we often see photographers make short-term decisions. One of those I just talked about it on the podcast the other day, which is kind of what I see a lot of photographers do is they say, okay, well, what we're going to do is we're not booking clients, so what we're going to do is we're just going to offer mini sessions. And now what happens is you have this, let's say you previously were a high-end luxury experience you're offering, and now what you're doing is you're offering this service product that's less than what your clients might expect or what you have previously been putting out. And so what happens is this short-term decision all of a sudden puts your clients in this mindset of, okay, well, maybe your product actually isn't worth what you were charging. If we can get it for less, then well, why not just keep doing this? Why should we pay more, or why should we go to this higher product when we don't really see the value of it? And so I think it's pulling yourself out of those short-term decision-making processes when times get tough and looking at, okay, yeah, it might be a little bit of tough sledding down the way, but are there ways that you can communicate the value of what it is that you do a little bit better? And what a lot of photographers do is they say, oh, well, we're not booking, or we need money or whatnot, and this kind of it stems from that fear mindset of, you know, should I raise my prices? Should I start a senior rep program? Should I offer this new addition into my business? And what happens is we kind of steer away from that generates long-term success that would actually benefit your business in the long term, and we turn to these short-term approaches which just end up hurting us, where you know it's a 1-month mindset versus a 12-month mindset or 24-month mindset, if that kind of answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And that honestly is a topic that we could talk about for days on end.
A whole nother one,
Yeah, for sure. When you were talking, I was watching Ted Lasso the other night, and a quote that I just wrote down on my piece of paper so I didn't forget it is, find out before you freak out.
Yeah, that was in one of the new episodes right there,
Yes, it was. You know, and that honestly, like, if you can pull away from that freak out moment or that fear moment and really think of the big picture and the long term, that's where your success is going to come from. You know, and like you mentioned a few minutes ago, businesses that have the plan, you know, if we do go into the big scary word, that those are the businesses that are going to come out on the back end, you know, and during COVID, you know, none of us saw that coming. The people that took advantage of that time and planned and organized, they're doing very well, you know, business first. And we talked about that last night, you know, and that business has to be first in the equation.
Yeah, and kind of the find out before you freak out. I love that quote where he's like freaking out about a bunch. I won't spoil it, so if you're watching Ted Lasso, I won't spoil it for you guys. But there's this big thing that he's freaking out about, and you know, he doesn't even know if it's happening. And I think that that's a lot of photographers come into it also, where they like, oh, recession's coming, we're going to lose clients, we're going to lose a lot of money. And it's like, you don't know that yet.
Right.
So let's make this assessment when you start seeing some data come in. And first off, let's also just shore up your weaknesses. Let's focus on what you're really good at, and let's just communicate to your clients what it is that you do and why they should be coming to you over somebody else. Because just because the recession happens or the scary economic uncertainty comes, it doesn't mean that everybody's going to stop spending money. Like, there are still people that are going to spend money, right? And so it's knowing, how do you position yourself as the person that they're going to choose, rather than just, oh, well, they're not going to choose anybody at all. Why not just make yourself the person they're going to go to?
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes from so many facets,
Oh yeah, it's a multi-layered approach right there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not that magic bullet of pricing or products or marketing, or you have to have the full picture really put together on that. So speaking of like the economic environment, I was very impressed in your program in Austin when you were talking about, like, you're following American Express, you're following Delta, you're following these large companies, and you're using that as your indicators versus what you just hearsay. So with that in mind, the macroeconomic environment that we are all in right now, what is the effect that you're seeing on photographers, maybe in the luxury brand versus the lower to medium range?
Yeah, great question too. So what those companies all had in common, you just referenced, so the American Express, the Deltas, we see it a lot with, say like the higher end hotel chains and that sort of thing, is they all cater to a very different subset of the market than a lot of people. And what I would say is typically those individuals are also going to fall into those who are going to be high-end photography clients, those who maybe have a little bit more disposable income, maybe those who value things a little bit differently, where, it's not necessarily somebody who's flying for vacation and, they may have a lot of money and they're like, hey, we're slumming it back in coach because it's like, we don't care about the flying experience, whereas somebody that values the service level, they're gonna spend a little bit more. And so what we can do is we can start kind of drawing these parallels, right? Where you see these individuals who care about the service, who care about what it is that the brands are doing, and we can say, okay, well, how is that going to translate into photography? And what you see is that those people are still willing to spend on what they value, whereas the lower and the middle price photographers, we run into a couple different issues. Well, and we'll get to this too in a minute, but one of those is that typically the photographers that are charging lower or medium prices, we have a couple things happen. So the lower price photographers say, well, this is a great way to bring a lot of clients in. We're just going to lower our prices, and as a result, everybody's going to book with us because we're going to offer something that's so good that they can't possibly say no.
Yes, exactly.
And what happens is we kind of run into this, what we call the price quality heuristic. And what happens is we associate lower prices with lower quality service. And so what happens is the people that say, well, we're going to actually choose to invest in these environments, well, we're not going to go there. We're going to choose somebody else.
Yes.
And so the middle price photographer says, well, awesome. We're not the low price, but we're also not the high price. So that means a ton of people are going to come to us too, right? We're offering an amazing quality service. We're half the price of the expensive photographer down the road. So we're going to book more clients. And it doesn't really work like that.
Right.
And so what you're seeing is a lot of these brands that are up on top, and then we call that the middle one, the price squeeze effect, where what happens is you lose on the low price clients because the people who don't value what you do are going to choose the cheaper one. And the people who do value photography are going to go with the more expensive one because, again, the price quality heuristic. What is also more expensive is generally the better service. And with these companies, you can kind of draw these parallels where it's saying, okay, well, people that truly value the service experience that they're investing in, they're going to go with the higher price typically. That's not always the case, but for the most part, if it's a big experience that they want, they're going to go there. And so we can see these parallels where those middle and lower photographers are going to struggle a lot. And we saw this happen especially in the senior market in 2020, where all of a sudden we shut down the world. There aren't proms, there aren't school dances, sporting events aren't happening. All of a sudden these kids have these parents that are saying, how do we give, little Johnny, little Susie, made up names, but how do we give these individuals their the best high school experience we possibly can.
Right.
And you saw this shift to senior photography. And so almost every single photographer who was in that high price market boomed in 2020, 2021.
Absolutely.
And you guys probably saw that across, from everything White House. And talking to a lot of photographer friends, like a lot of people saw, I think my revenue was up 50 to 75% year over year from 2019 to 2020 and 2021, simply because you saw people investing a lot in photography. And they saw this as a way of investing in what was of importance to them. And you see the same trends still continuing where people are saying, you know what, 2020 taught us a lot. It taught us a lot about what we need to do in order to have these experiences now. And that's why you see these airlines. That's why you see American Express, which is typically an indicator of a higher credit consumer, which typically lends itself to those, again, who are more in that high-end market. And so you see those really strengths in the market translating to the photography where people are willing to invest. You just have to go out and be the person that they're going to invest in.
Yeah, absolutely. So along those lines, what are some of the most common mistakes that you're seeing within, a full range? It could be at the top, middle, bottom. What are causing problems for people in each of those markets right now?
Yeah. Well, how much time do we have? Again, this is like another one that's could be another whole episode in and of itself. Right. So a couple of the most common ones are, we see a lot of photographers not specializing. And it's one of those things where you may say, okay, well, why is this? What's happening? Well, what we've been told is that the only way to make it in photography is to be a generalist, is to do every single thing. But if that was truly the case, then why is it that most of the well-known photographers that you look up to are known for one specific thing? Right. Why is it that we immediately hear the name Peter Hurley and you immediately think headshots? Why is it that you think Sue Bryce and you immediately go to women's portraiture? Why is it that those photographers are known for that? It's because they've chosen to specialize. And what happens is we as humans associate specialization with the best.
Right.
We associate, we don't go
think
to
about your doctor.
Yeah, we don't go to a heart doc, or we don't go to a pediatrician if we're having a heart problem, right? It's okay. Well, they're caring for kids and our general physician. We don't go to them if you're having a heart attack. You go, well, I want the best heart doctor. So you're going to go to somebody who specializes in that.
Absolutely.
And so what happens is you kind of see these photographers, they're like, well, we specialize in seniors and weddings and newborns and maternity and family, and they list
passport photos.
Yeah. And by the way, we can even take your dog's portrait and that baby cake smash that you want to do for your kid's second birthday, right? And so you see these things happen where we kind of generalize and we think that, okay, well, the best way to bring clients in the door is to appeal to everybody.
Yep.
And what happens is this ends up diluting your message. And so one of the questions I get a lot is, this popped up in my academy group the other day. They go, do I have to have 2 separate Instagrams for my wedding and my family stuff and my seniors? And I just asked her one simple question. And I said, I asked her something along the lines of, which method, 2 Instagrams or one, which method allows you to speak to your client in a more clear manner? Which one are you able to direct your messaging to better? How are you able to ask about their pain points, communicate the value that you provide? And a lot of photographers will say, well, I can do that on both. But what happens is you sure can, but it dilutes your message. And not every single thing that you put out is going to speak to that particular client. And so that's one of the things that we see a lot is people trying to do too much and thinking that that's the method of booking. And that's not to say that there are studios out there that don't do extremely well with this, but what they do is they segment their brand in a way that allows them to do that. And so that's not to say, I don't do commercial work or I don't do family shoots here and there, but it's not who I'm speaking to, right? The other thing is we also see photographers fall into this commoditization trap where essentially what happens is they say, well, what we're going to do is we're just going to put out our work and that's going to be it. That's what we're going to do at the end of the day is we're just going to create great work and that's going to bring us clients. It's what's always worked and that's what's going to continue to work. And then
get to retire.
Yeah, and then we get to retire. We get to the what is it, retirement age, 62, 65, whatever it is, and then we say, and that's it. That's our our game plan right there.
Yep.
And what we see is that as more and more photographers come into the market, that's not working so well anymore.
Right.
That's one of those things where, yeah, that used to work, but nowadays that's not really working. So those are a couple traps that people fall into, is they think that by doing a little bit of everything, that's going to make them more successful, and then all they got to do is just take great photos, and that's going to pay the bills. And I think as we said at dinner last night jokingly, it goes, we don't have to run like our business like a business if that's what's going to happen. It's like, well, we actually do. But,
yeah, you absolutely do.
Yeah, if you put photography first, that's not to say that you don't want great photos. Like, it's not to say don't get better as an artist, but at the same time, that's not the end all be all.
Yeah, and I've heard you say before, you know, and I'm pretty much taking your words, you're like, I'm not the best photographer out there, you know, but you do solid work, and you know how to market, and you know how to sell, you know, and that's really important. And I want to point that out to everybody today. Like, you're not just an educator. You're not just a podcaster. You know, you are a studio owner. You are photographing and doing this day in and day out, and taking that firsthand knowledge, real time, and transferring it into your education platform. You know, so you're speaking from, you know, right now, you know, and not just, you know, theoretical.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is like, if you think that like the way out is to just take great photos, why is it that we have the starving artist stigma? Why is it that some of the best artists are the people that are barely making it by? Where you say, well, how are you not doing well? Your work is incredible. And this is across the genre. This isn't just photography. It's sculpting, it's painting, it's drawing, you know, any of those creative mediums.
Yep.
And yet you see the person that's producing work that you're like, well, I'm way better than that dude. Why is he killing it? And I'm struggling, you know, to turn on the electricity this month, right? And it's because our clients will always see art as subjective. There is no perfect painting, there's no perfect photo. And so, sure, you can get really great at photography, but we've probably all had those instances where we book a client, and what's the first thing they do? They go, oh, well, you know what, we're really looking to this photo for inspiration. And it's like bad exposure. They're using like this nasty preset. It's not something that you would say is like a great quality artwork, but our clients don't see that.
Right.
They see something else in the portrait. And so if we focus on what's subjective in terms of just producing great artwork versus how are we solving their pain points? What solution are we providing them over other photographers? How is it that we're able to help them? Are we communicating with that with our clients? And that's where the branding comes in. That's where the marketing comes in.
Yeah.
And if you're able to market, if you're able to say, get your clients to say, oh, that's me, this person can help me.
Right.
And you know, this looks like in, you know, seeing your portraits, even just simple stuff like, what am I gonna do about hair and makeup? I'm worried I won't look like myself with professional hair and makeup. And so you can say, well, we're gonna solve that problem by giving them hair and makeup, but it doesn't address that underlying concern of how are you going to help them. And that's where our messaging, our branding comes in, where we say, you know what, we only work with the best hair and makeup artists that know exactly how to achieve any look that you want, so that you never have to worry about not looking like yourself. We can hone in and figure out exactly how you want to look in your portraits, make you look the absolute best version of yourself, so you don't have to stress about doing it all yourself. We take care of that for you.
Right. Just set that aside.
Yeah. And how many photographers are doing that? Not as many as could be.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to jump back here a little bit. You got a little ahead of me here.
Sorry. Wouldn't be the first time either.
Hey, no, I'm just kidding. So also, just a reminder, if you do have questions, make sure and put them in the chat. We're going to keep moving on here, but if you do have something for Sean to answer on the air live today, make sure and put it into the chat so we can read it out. Let's go back to the price quality heuristic.
Yeah.
I want you to talk a little bit more about that, and I want you to tell the story of the tripod.
Yeah.
Because that is very relatable, and you yourself, who understands this, dropped right into that as you should. You know.
Absolutely, yeah. So the story Matt's referencing is oh my gosh, probably 7-8 years ago now. So we're in Germany, family trip. We're going to drop my brother off to go to school, study abroad in London. So we stopped by, we have some family in Germany. And one of the things that I wanted to do in this trip was I wanted to take away just like some really great like cityscape photos. That's what I was gonna do.
Yep.
And so of course I pack like the $40 tripod that I got at Best Buy, and what does it do? Like day one, the head is flipping over, it's not holding the weight of the camera. I go, I need a tripod. And so we are in this small town in Germany. Like we're not in Frankfurt, we're not in Munich, like we're in this small town. Just happens to have a camera store. And so I go with my aunt, and she's kind of translating the transaction a little bit. She knows nothing about tripods. Like this isn't somebody who's a photographer. She just, hey, here are the tripods. Which one do you want? So I had one indicator to go off of, and that was price. And so as somebody who knows that this is something that we do, we see high quality goods priced at high prices and low quality goods priced at low quality. That's typically what you pay is what you get, right? I said, okay, well, there's one for like 40 euros or 60 euros, something like that, and then there's one for 200. Yep. And I said, you know what? I don't want to have to buy another tripod. When I get to London or Paris or wherever, we're just going to invest. We're just going to go with the higher price tripod. And it was the better quality one. It actually is still a tripod that I have today, and it's held up 7-8 years later. But what I did in that moment is what we do every single day, where we say, if this is lower priced, and even if it's great quality, the first question is, what's wrong? Like, why is it that price? Yeah.
Why is the Mercedes-Benz only $22,000?
Oh, it's got 180,000 miles on it, right?
It doesn't come with seats.
Yeah, it doesn't have a steering wheel. And then we see the lower priced items that even if they're okay quality, it's probably something that's going to break down the line. It's not as good of quality as something that's a higher priced item.
Right.
And this doesn't always hold true, but 95% of the time it does. And the reason that our brain does this is because what utilizes the most energy of anything that you do, let's just say sitting, is your brain. Your brain is an organ that utilizes the most energy. And so what has happened is over the years, this is like basically going back to like primitive times, our brain has developed something that we call a heuristic, a shortcut. And so what it does is it says, okay, well, if this is true, and this has happened time and time and time again, but originally we were drawing this middle conclusion, well, let's just cut out that middle conclusion and hop to the end conclusion. And so what we do is
to save energy.
To save energy.
Okay.
Every thought is a calorie, right? We don't think of that, but that's
boy. I should think a lot more than.
Yeah, burn some calories by thinking, right? And so what we see is we see this happen every single day where we develop shortcuts. It's why does your brain, as you're driving, turn off, right? How many times do you leave work and get home and you cut out the entire middle portion? It's because we've done it a million times. We don't need to do that. Our brain does this every single day, where there are periods where it kind of shuts off and it provides these shortcuts. And so what happens is with this price quality heuristic, even if you are providing a great service for your clients, even if you are the absolute best photographer, what happens immediately by pricing yourself low is you immediately become the question of what's wrong. Why is this priced so inexpensive? And it brings red flags to your consumers, and also it works in the opposite direction. You don't have to be the best. Like Matt said, I'm not the best photographer. And one of the things that we see is that if you price yourself high, it immediately provides some sort of credibility. Right? You have to back it up a little bit. You have to provide great services and just raise your prices and everything will be dandy. No, you need to have the processes. And what I call this in my business is the senior portrait framework, the 5 gears. And it consists of branding and marketing, client experience, preparation process, your foundation. So, how is it on a business level that you're priced? So there are multiple facets of it. Yeah. But one of those is we say, okay, well, we're going to price ourselves high, and that's going to lend some credibility to the level of service that we're actually providing for our clients. It's not going to set off those alarms in their head of, okay, well, what's wrong?
Yeah. It's so interesting. So the heuristic then is not just a thought process, it's a biological, your body is making that decision and you're unconscious about it, essentially.
Absolutely, yeah. And we see this in a ton of different areas, but it's a shortcut is what your brain is doing. And so it's less about the logical thought process behind it as much as it is your brain immediately saying, well, this is what we know is true for 99% of the stuff, so most likely it's true for this instance too.
That's awesome. So in our conversation last night, I'm going to reference that a little bit. You were talking about like buying the real Louis Vuitton versus the imitation.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really clear separation of, you know, your clients who really want the real thing and the ones that they're okay with having the fake one. You know, so when you're talking about that decision that's being made and wanting the real versus the not real, how does that lend itself to like the power of the brand versus taking, you know, what you're doing and commoditizing it? Like,
well,
these are big questions.
These are big questions. How much time do we have left? Yeah. And it's kind of going back. So I remember it was freshman year in high school. So this is like 2000, I don't know. It was a few years after the iPhones had come out. And
mine was considerably before that, Sean.
Wasn't going to bring that up. So this is back when like the iPhone was all the rage. It still kind of is. And people had just gotten an iPhone, and one of our friends goes, yeah, I got an iPhone too. And you look at it and it goes, this isn't an iPhone. It was called the HiPhone, like with an H in front of it. And it was this knockoff phone. And to them, they didn't care. It got the job done. It was what they wanted, right? It looked enough like an iPhone. It didn't operate at all like an iPhone. Like the touch screen, you had to like, you know, slam your finger into it to even make a call and all that stuff. And so it wasn't the real deal, but they didn't care. And as you referenced, with the fake Louis Vuitton, the real Louis Vuitton, it's all about brand. Because the people that know that they want the actual thing, they want the product to work, or they want that emotional feeling. Let's just call it what it is.
The experience of buying it.
Yeah, let's just call it what it is. Like luxury products
are
an emotional experience. We don't buy luxury products because they fulfill the best utility. Like that's just not the name of the game.
That's a great quote. Anybody listening should write that down. That's a good one.
It's true. I can go and buy a purse at Walmart that does the exact same things. It can carry your phone, it can carry your wallet, your clutch. You know, you can throw whatever you want in your purse, and you're going to get the exact same use, the same utility out of the Louis Vuitton bag as you would the $10 Walmart bag. But what it comes down to is that people who truly value what it is that the experience provides are going to go with that.
And what that brand represents.
Yeah. And that's exactly why you see people gravitate towards iPhones. It's why you see people gravitate towards luxury cars. It's why you see people gravitate towards just about any luxury good or service out there. It's because they know what the brand stands for. They know the value and the quality that it comes with. And the people that say, well, we just kind of want to be seen as like somebody who also does that, well, sure, they'll go and buy the knockoffs, but the people who know and who value that are always going to go with that real brand over, you know, the knockoff counterfeit.
Right, and it's an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Too, you know, and that's a big thing. It's like you said, it's an emotion.
Yeah.
You know, you have to work to achieve that thing.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is a lot of photographers, I'm sure you hear this a lot too, is they say, well, we want to make this business, we want to be able to have it thrive, and we want to do it with low prices because we want to make sure that it's accessible to everybody.
I have heard that.
Yeah, I bet you have. I've heard it many, many times. They say, we want to be able to give to clients that are like us that we weren't able to afford photography. We want to be able to give back to them. And we kind of have to have like a come to Jesus moment, right? Where it's, do you want to run a business or do you want to run a charity?
Yeah.
And let's just call it for what it is.
Yeah.
And there is no right answer. It's truly what you want to do. But we have to get clear on, there's never been a business that has made its living, who has become profitable, who has actually given a livelihood. So if you're searching for, you know, you want to have that freedom, that flexibility, well, we have to make money to actually make that happen, to either put processes in our business. And so what happens is we see photographers where they say, well, we want to appeal to everybody. And that ultimately lends itself to lower prices because we say, okay, well, what's the best way to be accessible? It's to lower your prices. And we come into this trap where not only are you not growing your business, but you're also not providing, you're also not caring for yourself. And you have to ask yourself, at what point will you have to throw in the towel, wave the white flag? And so you also see this kind of tie into the brand and commodities too, because now all of a sudden by doing this noble cause, you have lowered your prices and you kind of put yourself in this bucket with all the other photographers, and you kind of feed right back into that price quality heuristic of the lower prices, the charging less than you should for your services, those types of things too.
Yeah. Well, and then, like the title of the program we're doing right now, you become interchangeable. You're being judged based on, that cost and not the experience and not the quality that comes with it. So then it's very easy to be like, well, this one's $5 cheaper. Why wouldn't I do that? If I'm going to get the same exact
experience. And that's, kind of what happens when we see photographers where they're just showing sneak peek after sneak peek, and they're asking these questions of, why am I struggling? And you might be asking yourself this question, why am I not booking clients? And chances are, if you've been plateaued, if you've been stagnated, if you haven't been able to raise your prices past a certain level, chances are you're posting sneak peek or finished image after finished image and saying, hey, we have this amazing artwork. But what happens is every other photographer is doing that too. So how are you different? And if you're not establishing yourself as a brand, marketing to your client, speaking to their pain points, the solution that you provide, well, by default, you're a commodity.
Right.
How are you different? You're not.
Yeah. Now, in your full program, there's a slide that shows a salmon swimming upstream. And I'm assuming that where you're going with that is like you need to stop doing what the pack is doing and do what you need to do to stand out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of one of those things that's, why do we see the salmon swimming upstream? It's because it's doing something different than every other fish in the stream. All the other fish are swimming downstream, and the salmon is fighting its way back upstream. It goes against what other fish feel as natural.
Right.
And so what happens is if you follow everything else that everybody's doing, when we're not looking at the trout and saying, oh, look at that trout, or not, whatever else fish is. I'm clearly not a fishing person, but I know some fish. And we're not looking at the other fish and saying, well, why are, they're swimming downstream. Well, that's every other fish. You're saying, yeah, okay, cool. That's what fish do, right?
Right.
Why does the salmon stand out? Because it's doing something different.
Right.
And so if you're looking at other photographers, so maybe you've been the photographer where you say, well, I need to raise my prices. So what do? You go to every single photographer in your market and you say, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at their website and see what they're priced at. I'm just going to kind of pick the market average, and that's what I'm going to be priced at, versus saying, well, let's base it on our cost of goods. Let's base it on what our cost of doing business is and price ourselves from there. Or it's things like, well, that photographer's offering a style closet, or that photographer's offering products or whatever. It's less about doing what they're doing and more about how can you put your own spin on it. And that's where the brand versus the commodity distinction comes.
For sure. And then that feeds you too. Like when you have the business designed the way that you really want to do it, and you're having the success that comes from that feeds your soul, it feeds your energy, and then you can move on.
Yeah.
So I know we're getting close on time, but there is one topic that I just want to throw in here right at the end to leave everybody kind of wanting more and curious. So Gen Z, they're here.
They are.
And then is it the Alpha generation?
I think it's Alpha next, which we're just going to try not to talk about that for a little time because they're still crawling in diapers. So we're going to avoid that for now.
So how is marketing going to change? Is there going to be anything that's going to be relatable from now, or are we just going to throw this whole thing up in the air and start over?
Well, yeah, so how much time have we got?
46 seconds.
Well, one of the things is we have to look. So marketing as a whole is not going to change. So that's the good news for you guys, is marketing is not going to change, but the way that we market will. So this underlying psychological premise of marketing, of how do we solve their problem, what's our solution, that's marketing. That's let's just say that's what it is. And now how we speak to the client, totally different. And we've seen this, if I were to guess, it's only going to get closer and closer to how can we become the most personal business as possible? How can we get as close to our clients, our consumers, as humanly possible via social media? And this is why you see personal vlogging being so popular. It's why we see chatbots being used by businesses. It's how can we provide as much of a personalized service as possible? So that's kind of that in a nutshell. I know we just hit our time, but if you haven't already done that, think about that, because that's what's going to carry your business. Is how can you communicate, how can you become accessible, and how can you become the brand that you're less a business and more of a personal outlook on things. That's exactly what we're doing right here. Is you guys are putting that personal face to WHCC.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not something that you can just snap your fingers and do. It is a process of putting yourself out there, and becoming the human, not just the business, and having the story and the family and the dog and all the things. So it's so interesting. So we're so excited to have you here. You're a wealth of knowledge. Your full program that I heard was second to none. You did a fantastic job today. Where can people find you, to learn more about what you do from the photography side, from your education side, all that kind of stuff? Like where are you living online?
Everywhere.
Aside from a Delta airplane.
Besides from an airplane, yes. So best place to find me is Sean Brown Productions or Senior Photo Education on Instagram. And then also seniorphotography.education.com. And then my client site is SeanBrownProductions.com. Okay. Also on YouTube, TikTok. Pretty much just type in Sean Brown anywhere.
And we're going to get your
face. And you'll
be
good to go, yeah.
So we do have one question coming in. Do you mind going a little bit longer here? And before we read that, I do want to rewind. I do want to remind, it's easy for me to say, if you're watching this on the recording and you have questions for Sean, make sure and put them into the chat. We do keep an eye on those, and we know how to find this guy, and we can get answers for that. So question coming in, how do I become a better marketer, and how do I know what's important to my clients?
Yeah. How do I become a better marketer? That's
another 4 hours.
How much time do we have, Matt? Yeah. We might need a round 2, right?
Yeah.
So what I would say, I think that if there's like one piece of advice for how to become a better marketer, it's to become client-centric. And what I mean by this is it's less about what you want to put out there and more about what your clients want to see. And so I see a lot of photographers who are like, well, we're going to do this and this and this. And my first immediate question is, how does that benefit your client?
Right.
And oftentimes they say, well, it doesn't. And so if there's any way of becoming a better marketer, it's thinking, what is it that my clients want to see, or prospective clients want to see? What is it that they value? And we can see this on our analytics on Instagram. We can say, okay, well, what's getting the most likes? What's getting comments? What's getting saves and shares and comments? What I think of it is those are kind of like the higher ups. It's what takes the most effort, what takes the most energy. It takes a lot more energy to comment, to share, or to save something than it does just little double tap. We can all do that. And so as you look at that data, what is it that your clients resonate with? Mm-hmm. And then in terms of like, how do I know what's important to my clients? Well, you have to put yourself in their shoes. If you haven't sat down with your clients, like a focus group is fantastic, where we can actually get data on like what is it that they want out of their photo experience with you. And as you photograph more clients, as you talk with more clients, there are going to be patterns that emerge. And so for me, I know that my clients, what they want first and foremost is they want to stand out, which is my brand motto. Yep. They want to be unique. They don't want to fit a certain mold. They want to be able to have a session experience that is about them, about capturing their personality and authenticity. And so what we do is we say, okay, well, what's important to my clients? And for them, it's standing out, it's being unique and being authentic. And then what is it that you as a photographer, how is it that you, based on what it is that you offer, solve that problem, solve that issue, tie it to them? And so and that's kind of how to become a better marketer too, is once we know what it is that they want, by putting ourselves in their shoes, to talking with them, to asking them, what is it about me that you're drawn to? Why choose me? Why not go with me? What is it that you're seeing from other brands or other photographers that they're doing better? Then what we do is we say, okay, well, now we know what it is that they want. Here's what we offer. Now we tie the two together, and that's your messaging.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. And again, we could talk about that for...
That's another 2-hour program.
Yes,
right
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Sean. And I truly hope that you check out all the places that Sean's at on social media and online. Great guy, great education resource, and wonderful human being altogether. Thanks for joining us today. And again, if you have questions as you're watching the rewind on this, make sure and put them in there, and we'll get them answered for you. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.